Der Kommission zur Lage in den Hotspots auf den griechischen Inseln, insbesondere im Lager Moria. Im Namen des Rates erhält auch hier zuerst das Wort Frau Ministerin TUPPURAINEN.
Frau Vorsitzende, honourable members of the Parliament, the situation in the hotspots on the Greek islands is extremely difficult. According to this week's Integrated Situation Awareness and Analysis report, over 47,000 migrants have arrived by sea to the Greek islands this year. This means there has been a 69% increase in arrivals by sea. Almost 36,000 persons are present on the islands, inside and many also outside official camp areas, designed for a maximum of around 8,000. This is the first time we have reached such a high number since the implementation of an EU-Turkey statement. Conditions are unacceptable. Migrants and asylum seekers are facing a dire situation with significant shortages of basic shelter and unsanitary, unhygienic conditions. At-risk groups, such as people with disabilities, are often unable to access basic services, such as water, sanitation and hygiene facilities. Unaccompanied minors are accommodated in facilities which are not adapted to their needs. There are long lines for poor quality food, mismanagement and lack of information, which all contribute to a chaotic and volatile atmosphere. Since the end of August, there have been 3 deaths in and around the Moria camp. In September, there were more than 1,000 unaccompanied minors in Moria. Most of them are living in unsuitable conditions with adults. President, honourable members, urgent action is needed, and there are things that can be done quite speedily, such as decongestion of the islands, which is also the priority of the Greek government. I understand that there are plans to transfer over 5,000 asylum seekers already authorised to continue their asylum procedure on the mainland. To fast-track these plans would be helpful. We also take note of government measures to speed up and tighten asylum procedures and manage flows to Greece by improving border surveillance. More observation posts are being put up at the land borders. Surveillance of the Evros River is being stepped up, while at the sea borders, the capacity of the harbour police will be boosted by providing additional vessels and personnel. Many more employees are being recruited to the asylum service. In this way, the ability to handle cases will be tripled. These and other measures are part of the new ambitious asylum legislation that the Greek Parliament adopted on 31st of October. It will be of utmost importance to implement as fast as possible the new provisions, including the asylum and return procedures. On asylum, there is reportedly a backlog of 68,000 cases. With the new rules in place, asylum requests would be handled within 60 days. This is a very welcome development, provided that all required legal safeguards under the EU law are also in place. The return rate so far has been critically low for far too long. Returns are instrumental in keeping the numbers down on the islands. The plan of the Greek government includes a target of returning 10,000 migrants by the end of 2020. This is ambitious, but it can be done with the appropriate procedures in place and assistance from International Organization for Migration, Frontex and EU member states. These measures go hand in hand with the legislative amendments on asylum and are all requisites to reduce the overcrowding of the camps. Effective returns are also require the cooperation of Turkey. It is vital that both parties apply in good faith all the provisions and operating procedures agreed as a result of the statement. It is difficult to predict if arrivals will continue in line with the current trends. Depending on the situation in Turkey, the extended deadline to arrange for legal papers expired on 31st of October, and the situation along the Turkey-Syrian and Turkey-Iranian borders, the current pressure may be maintained for some more weeks. Regardless of the way the situation develops in Turkey and the region, the urgent steps described above must be taken immediately to reduce overcrowding and ensure dignified conditions for all people in the camps. I am certain that the Commission, in its statement, will elaborate on the assistance and advice it provides to the Greek government on this issue. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Vielen Dank, Frau Ministerin. Für die Kommission erhält das Wort Herr Kommissar AVRAMOPOULOS.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, dear colleagues, as you all know, Greece has been exposed to migratory pressure for many years now. While there is no comparison with the intensity of the situation 5 years ago, definitely we are not where we were at that time, we all recognise the huge challenge that Greece is facing and that Greece is constantly exposed to migratory pressures, which at periods becomes difficult to bear. At the beginning of the year 2019, there were more than 35,000 migrants present on the hotspot islands. 17,000 migrants were present on Lesbos alone. It has been, and it remains a priority of this Commission to help the entire country addressing these challenges. Urgent action is needed to alleviate the pressure on the islands and to improve the conditions for migrants and the refugees. We need to do everything we can to support national authorities, and we do it. As regards now the financial support, the Commission has made available to Greece €2.2 billion since 2015, the largest financial support ever provided to a member state for migration. We have also been providing technical and operational support, with colleagues from the Commission being deployed on the ground and being in regular contact with the Greek authorities. We have been doing that during the last 5 years, supporting the previous government and the current government in Greece, that they are doing whatever they can in order to address this issue. However, and as you know, the role of the national authorities in handling the situation on the ground remains of paramount importance. I want to be very clear on that. The Commission can only provide support. It cannot replace the Greek authorities. The Commission, at all levels, operation, but equally politically, is in permanent contact with the Greek authorities. At the beginning of October, I visited both Athens and Ankara, together with the Minister of Interior of Germany, Mr. Seehofer, to discuss the situation with the government in both countries and find ways to address the challenges, also in the context of the EU-Turkey statement. In addition, just a few weeks ago, a technical mission at the highest level with my Director General, Mrs. Vivi Michou, also went to Greece to discuss ways to further support Greece in developing effective solutions to the challenges on the ground. In fact, Many of the existing problems have become worse with the increase of arrivals to the islands over the last 6 months. The decongestion of the islands and the need to increase the reception capacity on the islands and on the mainland remain a key priority. More efficient asylum procedures would greatly contribute to improving the processing of the asylum requests. This would also help speeding up the return of those who have no right to stay. Moreover, ensuring the provision of adequate health care and, in particular, intensifying the preparations for winterisation remain paramount and very urgent. Seeing those images of vulnerable people stranded in the cold in the past has been a collective shame for Europe. We simply cannot have another winter like that. And we have been given all assurances from the Greek government that they have taken care of it. As you all know, the Greek Parliament has adopted a new law on asylum and reception on the 31st of October, with the objective of making procedures more efficient without compromising on fundamental rights. It's a very important step forward. We have been following closely its adoption process. Once it will be formally notified to the Commission, we will assess the law's compliance with the EU legal framework. Now, let me give you some examples of EU support on the islands. The creation of a new reception and identification centre in Samos, in the island of Samos, which Greece is currently working to implement with EU funding, is a positive step towards improving the living conditions on the island. It is important to make the new centre operational as soon as possible and no later than January 2020. The Commission staff on the island of Lesbos has facilitated, with the agreement of the authorities, the renting of an area where asylum seekers have improved living conditions. In September 2019, the Commission provided an additional €4.2 million funding to the International Organization for Migration for the creation of safe zones on all hotspot islands. The critical situation of unaccompanied minors in Greece continues being a top priority, and I have personally called for a proactive approach to find new places and reach tangible results, as well as to facilitate their integration. In this context, the Commission has recently awarded an emergency assistance project for the creation of safe zones dedicated for unaccompanied minors in the islands of Lesbos, Samos, Leros and Kos. I know that the Minister of Interior of Greece has also urged his counterparts to relocate unaccompanied minors. Everybody should be part of this effort. It is not a Greek problem. It is not a neighbourhood problem. It is a European problem. The Commission supports such bilateral agreements between Member States, including financially. The assistance of Member States on the basis of solidarity and responsibility is of utmost importance. Migration remains an issue of joint responsibility of all Member States and the Union as a whole. Migration and management of migration is testing every day the values and the principles upon which Europe is built. As I said before, it is a European issue, and even an issue of global dimensions. The moment we are discussing this issue today here in Brussels, more than 400 million people are somewhere in the world seeking for a safe haven. Migrants or refugees. And the root causes are still there. And unfortunately, they will be there for many, many years. So we have a huge responsibility to address this issue and lead the whole world in providing support to these people and finding practical solutions. At the same time, returns need to be accelerated. Also in the context of the effective implementation of the EU-Turkey statement. The pace, the rhythm of returns from Greece to Turkey remains critically slow, with about 1,900 returns since March 2016, of which some 130 in the year 2019. The number is very low, and we all know that. This low level of returns is a huge obstacle to any progress. At the same time, also in the field, in the area of returns, Greece is and will not be left alone. While a lot has to do with improved procedures by the Greek authorities, the European Borders and Coast Guard Agency stands ready to provide operational and financial support to Greece for returning people, not only to Turkey under the EU-Turkey statement, but to their country of origin, in full respect, I repeat it and I stress it, in full respect of the principle of non-refoulement and other safeguards embedded in our EU acquis on return. We acknowledge the efforts of Greece all these years in all these interconnected areas. A lot has been achieved, but there is still much to be done. The Commission is committed to continue working hand in hand with the Greek authorities and together with our agencies on the ground, mobilise all support needed there. Finally, let me conclude again by recalling that only together, in a spirit of trust and unity, we can find sustainable solutions for the big issue of migration in Europe. I welcome the declaration by the President-elect of last week, when she announced that a draft proposal for a new migration package will be presented by the new Commission in the second quarter of next year. It must indeed be our goal to become a model of how migration can be managed sustainably, with a human approach, but effectively. And believe me, our Commission has put strong basis for that. Thank you very much for your attention.
Vielen Dank, Herr Kommissar.